A very good afternoon to all of you and to the esteemed panelists. So we would just run a little faster because I think we are a little late. That's what I've been told. So when I just talk about uh, fertility preservation, we all know that we had always been talking about fertility preservation in the past. The change is that it is now beyond the cancers. Now, in this panel, we are going to discuss about the social, ethical, and the business questions on this. I am myself a gynecologist, and I know that working in private practice, we all often encounter these days girls who read through ChatGPT, AI, and Gemini, and because of their professional concerns, they want to, lead a life where they can make a choice. So when we are talking about making a choice, I would like to ask to Dr. Shweta, fertility preservation, we all know it serves two very different populations. One, where it is medically indicated, that is in the cancer patients, and other, the healthy woman, those who choose to delay the motherhood. They are both medically similar in front of you, I think. But ethically, I think they are very, very different. How should the counseling between the two differ? And are are we all as Indian practitioners, we are consistently able to make this distinction for them?
Yeah. So I think whether it is because of the social or whether it's because of oncology, egg freezing has dramatically increased in last few years. Of course, the medical oncology freezing is a very situation which is very life-threatening crisis, and a time-bound decision has to be taken, and it's I think a lot of emotional stress, because at one point, at your own life is at stake, and then you're talking about a subject which is also very important. And the very fact that oncology treatment has dramatically improved, so it is very important also to offer them, and in fact the guidelines say it's mandatory to tell them about the fertility preservation. So that is one aspect, and the social is on a different, it's a lifestyle, it's what a personal choice, whether they want to do postpone the pregnancy for later years and do career or whatever. So there is no that kind of urgency or crisis in the life. It's a personal choice, not urgent, whether you can postpone it for 3 months, 6 months, you can plan. If you're staying abroad, you can come here, discuss with doctors. So very well planned it can be. So there are two different indications, but when we come to the actual clinical protocol, probably similar, but there is the first time when you're talking, it's a totally two different scenarios. So you should be very thorough, and depending upon the scenario, the right guidance has to be given.
Well said, ma'am. When you said we have to be very, very thorough, I would just like to ask Dr. Majumdar, do you think is the current informed consents that we have, this process is fit for the purpose? And what does good counseling, according to you, would look like? If a patient is simply uncertain about her future, she's still, she's unwell.
Well, currently there's a huge gap as far as good counseling for patients who want to electively freeze their eggs. And unlike oncology patients, we have to remember that these are healthy individuals with no imminent threat to their fertility. So they have to understand that this is purely a risk reduction strategy and not an insurance policy. And so they have to be made to understand that electively freezing eggs cannot guarantee a live birth in future, right? And because as people who are offering this service, we know that a woman freezing 10 eggs at age 38 and a woman freezing 10 eggs at age 28 will have very different future prospects. So for me, my main concern with regards to counseling is that it should be not just procedure-based counseling, it needs to be outcome-based counseling. And we need, the women need to know what are the exact probabilities of having a live birth in future rather than just possibilities. So a good counseling from an embryologist's perspective will focus on the impact of age on the future probability of having a live birth after freezing and thawing eggs, the impact of age on decline of egg quality, then what is the expected survival rate of, once the eggs are frozen and thawed? What are the expected fertilization rates, the likelihood of forming a blastocyst and obtaining a live birth from such embryos? Because there is a huge difference between eggs which are used fresh in a laboratory and eggs which have been frozen for a considerable period of time, sometimes a decade, and then thawed, and then to see whether they are viable. So I would judge the quality of counseling by whether a patient can understand what her frozen eggs can and cannot deliver in future.
So, Dr. Reema, as he already explained about, like, there's a huge, variation that exists across the different sectors. So, I would just like to ask you, when a patient comes to you, what questions should that patient ask about the laboratory before the patient wants to choose your laboratory? For choosing, because something is to be preserved and it is to be preserved for a very long period of time. So, what should a patient ask, and who is actually responsible for choosing those standards?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thank you, VOH, for having me here, and thank you for the question. So rightly said, accountability, you've already answered a part of my, what I should have said. But before that, I would like to endorse upon what Dr. Gaurav has already said, that while we are counseling or when they are asking these questions, it should be more oriented towards what is the outcome, what is the possibility of having a baby if you are freezing so many number of eggs at, let's say, a particular age, right? And the next would be probably the costs involved. What there is, it is could be a costly procedure for many. There is a yearly cost involved. So all of that should, if we, the patient has to know that what is the maintenance cost also, that it is not a one-time cost that is involved. Also, what should be she should be asking is, what is the success rate of your clinic in while you thaw these eggs? What is your thaw rate, right? What is how much of it you can bring it out actually? And then, of course, identity, like I said, how do you monitor these cryo tanks? What are your procedures? How are you making sure that it is not going to mix up my, when it is kept for sometimes years, my eggs are going to be with you. How do you ensure that they are not going to get mixed up with someone else's? And again, who's going to be responsible? Today I'm talking to you, maybe if I come 10 years down the line, who is going to be accountable? Whom should I go ask? What will happen maybe if your clinic, you are not there, or even if your clinic is not there, if it shuts down, or if there is any problem that comes in between, then maybe the chain of custody, if you are looking into these aspects as well. I think these are the questions that a patient should be asking.
So what happens, I'll just tell you a live example that happened across me as a gynecologist. So I work in a multi-specialty hospital. So it's 2-year backstory that I would like to share. And it is very concerning because it included both the medical as well as the social thing. This girl used to work in radiology department. So she underwent her routine checkups for, just like that. And suddenly she came to me for a routine, fitness, like we have in the hospital, the routine fitness. At that time, I found a lump in her breast. And she was, I think, 32 years old at that time. And somehow when I found this lump, I just ordered her a routine scan, because we don't expect at this age. So then we got to know that it was actually malignant. And in the routine, when we, investigated, And then when I came closer to her while talking, see, as a gynecologist, we have to, have the emotional constraints. Then she actually, because she was in the hospital, she had never disclosed to anybody, and then she suddenly disclosed that she was a divorcee. And she told me very clearly that she has eventual plans of marrying someone, though she does not have a partner still. But she was very sure that she wanted to have a baby eventually. So then what happened is that I immediately rushed everything for her, and I sent, because in the multi-specialty hospitals, usually in Faridabad, we do not have the IVF there inside the hospital itself. So what I did, I rushed her to one of the renowned, infant clinics immediately, where I knew that the eggs are being preserved, and I knew because it is renowned, it will be preserved for a longer period of time, and I knew that the standards would be maintained and everything. She immediately actually did inquire from me, and she trusted upon me as a gynecologist. Whatever I'll tell her will be correct. So then she went there, she got her eggs freezed first, and then she actually met the oncologist after that. That was the change that I saw in her. And today she is free of the cancer also, 2 years, and she has had a marriage last month. So when I saw her pic on the Facebook, I was so happy that she was able to do all these things, and she's confident in her marriage because she got the right partner. So Dr.
I
Shweta,
would like to
yeah.
add a caution here. While this sounds like a very heartwarming story, and I'm so glad that it ended so well, however, that is where, as an IVF specialist or a clinician, a caution comes that we should not be overselling hopes. Like, it sounds like a very hopeful story.
I'll come to that.
Yeah. So
That will be the
I
next
think
story.
the positivity is that there is option available, which was not there, 5 years back. The very thought that okay, I have some eggs, that emotionally for a women. So I think we should all be very happy that the technology has advanced to that extent that we have something like egg freezing. Both for social life is very complex. We may say and advise the youngsters, get married right time and have children. But the complex lifestyle which now has, it's not practically possible. So I'll tell you, my few years back, one of my gynecologist friend came with her daughter. And the first thing, all that right things I was telling, then in the night I was thinking, why was I preaching so much? Because the parents must have done, the life is not. So I think the technology has improved. There is an option. Of course, it has risk and not 100%, no guarantee.
Yeah.
I think that is at least
So,
we all.
all of us introspect ourselves in the midnights before we go to sleep, and we find these answers to ourselves. Correct. So, Dr. Parul, I would like to ask, across the private chains, hospital departments, and international patients that we come across, are there any meaningful differences in how fertility preservation is communicated to patients, and what's driving them?
So basically, when patients come to us, most of the times they are more aware now. And especially when women for social freezing or women who want to have their reproductive autonomy come to us, they are very well aware, most of the time well read. However, most of the international patients who come to us or patients who are coming through referral from an oncology setup, they're most of the times not very aware, and they need a very detailed counseling to explain to them what they are wanting to do and what they have been sent here for. So most of the times, this is a difference that we see amongst the women who want to have their reproductive rights and their autonomy, safeguarded, so that if whenever they're ready to have a family, they can start a family, versus patients who are coming to us for some emergency kind of consultation, because they now have to undergo a particular treatment wherein probably their fertility in future will be compromised.
So, Dr. Reema, when you maintain such, clinical, ethical, consistency across the centers, with patients who encounter ART for the first time, is a distinctive challenge at scale? How do you ensure that this patient who is in a smaller city receives the same standard of treatment, of care, receives the same standard of counseling, and, that a flagship center gets? Where are the gaps actually, that exist in such centers?
Yeah, Rightly asked. Why? Because 2-tier and 3-tier are still the places where there is so much of disproportion or in the information. It is still scattered, right? They need the most support, and unfortunately that is where the most of the expertise may or may not be there. So that is why rightfully asked, while we scale, how do we maintain that consistency? Of course, standardization, I would say, is the answer. Now, for example, in Indira, if I talk about the place where I work, it has scaled in last 1 decade. I also joined Indira, let's say 10 years back. It's been 9.5 years. So how we maintain the consistency is that when I joined Indira, for example, I had already been into gynecology practice for almost 9 years. And then I joined after doing a lot of courses, but we were inducted via a fertility academy, Indira Fertility Academy, where we went in and where all these SOPs were taught to us, right? So there is a medical excellence team that sits in the center at the HO level, and they make these SOPs for us. And of course, they work hand to hand with the quality team. There is a center level quality team as well as the central level, who actually make sure via various audit tools that they have, which sometimes they're quarterly, some are weekly, all those audit tools, that we are actually doing or maintaining or following these SOPs, right? So along with the clinicians that, like I said, the SOPs are taught, the lab KPIs, they are also monitored, and consistency, like lab is what is deciding the success or the win or the loss. So you
That's
got
what
to.
I wanted to ask Gaurav. I'm sorry to interrupt, but Dr. Gaurav understood that this is something that he would also like to answer. Like when we are talking about the lab, for the lab, who closes these gaps?
Right. So I partially agree with what is being said here, but we have to remember that fertility preservation is a very complex service. It's not a simple service. It is probably not even as simple as IVF, but it is very complex. And so a patient locally, we expect that they should have access to maybe evidence-based information, should have timely counseling about fertility preservation, should be aware of the realistic success rates, but we cannot expect a tier 2, tier 3 city to have a highly specialized embryology laboratory. That will happen in the top tier cities, where you expect the labs to have advanced embryology, where you expect very high volume cryo facilities with 24/7 embryology teams and a very advanced, oncofertility service. So the whole system will work on referral.
But Dr. Gaurav, when we are talking about such summits,
I'll add.
But
we
exactly-
have to, we
exactly
are
what
working
you
for,
said.
Bringing the health
I'll
sector
add to this how we see. I work
And-
in a center. I work, for example, in Chandigarh and Dehradun location. These are two bigger cities. Okay. In Chandigarh center, it's not only one center. We work on a hub and spoke model. So I have various spokes attached to me. These are at smaller places like Kangra, like
Sure.
Khadar, like
Yes.
these are remote places. So how we, first of all, we have standardized these
Protocols,
protocols, then we are monitoring them. Then each doctor, each KPI, each embryologist is being monitored, because each result is being entered into this EMR system that we have, the HIS. And then we prepare these clinical dashboards, which are as per particular KPI also, and as per particular person also, whether they are a clinician or a embryologist. So you have, and these are given to these people every month for them to monitor themselves, and whenever someone falls below a particular benchmark, then you need to see whether they need, where is it that help is required, and that is where the clinical directors come into play. So
That,
at
that
the
is
same time-
where,
yeah.
suppose she's talking about a chain which is agreed. They have their own protocols which has been followed in all the centers, and there is a collective, input and goes in. But that is precisely where the role of ART board has come. they have started inspection, they come and they visit even one person own. So that is the whole attempt of, whole idea of these boards, where their inspection is there. Now they have even started collecting data on the outcomes. And so I think slowly and gradually, the government also is going, even if there is, though I've worked in both chains also and this. So even one person owned clinic, because of this ART law, they have to register, they have to give all the data. So this is a step by a government to standardize and to keep an eye on all the IVF centers, registered centers. So I think this is a good move. Of course, there's more and more.
Can I just add a bit here,
yeah.
because we are talking about all the technical aspects as to how a lab or KPI is working. The question here that is very important is that how we are counseling these patients. And there is the gap in Tier 1, Tier 2 cities, where, because are these patients really aware of what they are going through? Sometimes we treat even this fertility preservation as an IVF procedure. Okay, yes, karte hai, let's start this, do the stimulation, and then you can go there and your eggs will be frozen. So probably informed consent as to explaining to the patient as to what they are going through, what are the risks involved, and what are the alternatives to the treatment is very important. And I'm not sure how well this is being done in various clinics.
So what we are doing at ours, and like when patients come to me, for this, so I, like you said that, there is a gap like Chandigarh and Kangra. If, since you are working in Indira and you are working at ART, if you know that Faridabad never had these labs, and all the patients are coming to either Delhi, for the lab work, or to for ART or for Indira both. So what I used to do, so that the labs actually come to my city and I grow them, I always make sure that I do not send them directly to Delhi, and I make sure that in Faridabad itself, the bulk of work increases to such an extent, the awareness increases to such an extent that we can create labs in our own city. So every doctor who is in, especially I feel it's the role of the gynecologists themselves, to make patients as much aware. As you said, if the patients are aware about what fertility preservation is all about, I think we will be able to close the gaps a
But
little
that
sooner.
is where the gap comes. While you can make protocols, you can train people, however, human factor would still be the gap, because how they are still carrying it out in their particular clinic is again, that can be variable, and whether the patient is actually feeling, listened to or heard and is feeling unhurried also.
Sure.
I guess that is where culture setting would come into practice. That once you've done all that, and when you have a culture, particular culture in that organization, whether it's a small single clinic
with
setup.
social media, I think culture barriers have actually reduced.
Yeah.
I feel like that very
Dramatically,
strongly.
yeah.
Social media has actually broken the culture barriers in India.
No, they
For
have
sure.
broken the cultural barriers, but not for people who need onco-fertility and onco-preservation. This is such a, blink of an eye decision for them. So they are so traumatized. So probably they are not able to go there and say and investigate how things are panning or how it would be for them. So that's what I said, that there's a huge difference between women who want to just preserve their fertility versus women who are forced to preserve their fertility because they are undergoing a treatment. So when we talk of these two, under the same umbrella, they are very two different treatments that we should be talking of and separating and segregating them when counseling them.
So, Dr. Shweta, I would like to ask you in this. See, when a patient, requests egg freezing, for purely social reasons, as I said, now we are coming to that. What is, a clinician's role?
So in social freezing, there is a lot of time, and a thorough counseling is required. Of course, you have to do a basic workup. What is the current status? If she's come well in time, she may have the very good reserve, and then all these nitty-gritties. The lab expertise. She has a time to think about where to go, which lab experience. So it's a teamwork. It's not just the gynecologist or the fertility specialist who is counseling. Also, what is happening in the lab, how good the overall, lab, because it's going to be a long-term preservation. And the technology and the technique and the skills of the lab is important. So there is a time. And of course, we need to tell that, it's not 100%, it's not completely guaranteed. She may need 2 or 3 more stimulations to get the right number to have a good possibility of a child in the future. And also the routine complications, injections, retrieval process, and the cost of not only the injections or the stimulation, retrieval, and the long-term storage. So the long-term storage also she has to pay, the consents. So everything, and then she can take a decision. She can sit on it, for a week, 2 months, 3 months, and
I
then
think
decide.
again, the onus would probably be on us clinicians. I think maturity would be for us the day we realize that a woman, after being informed everything, if she chooses not to go ahead with egg freezing, for example, if it's not age appropriate, for example, if the possibility of it converting into a live birth rate is less, and she chooses not to go ahead with it, and that is not a conversation failing, but a conversation actually working, that kind of mindset when we clinicians acquire, that day I think we've done our job well.
So when we want to make it a lifestyle product, I would like to ask my eminent panelists, maybe it's cross-cutting the theme, on the business part. Egg freezing has become one of the fastest growing revenue categories in Indian fertility care, with some employers now offering it as a workplace benefit. When a clinical service also happens to be a significant business opportunity, and when corporate practices are also involved, how do you think the field collectively ensures that the growth of fertility preservation is being driven by the patient's need and not by the market creation? How would we all do that?
That is by making sure that the decision is based on a lot of correct information and counseling. It has to be based on informed. It has to be an informed decision rather than based on marketing or fear, where they should be absolutely they should be in a position to understand what their eggs can and cannot deliver in future, and what impact will age have on their chances of having a live birth, and then they should be able to make an informed choice.
Yes, that's the one word answer. It's an informed choice.
Yeah, driving factor cannot be marketing or fear or the employer giving out benefits to the women to get their eggs frozen.
So the patient who banks on frozen eggs often does so without a clear picture, as we all know. They do not, like Dr. Reema and you both said this, they do not have a clear picture about it. Should the patients be told exact statistical picture, and they should be given fair, and including the probability that the frozen eggs maybe they do not result into a live birth and they're investing into something?
Yes.
That's a blind choice.
Only then
Yes.
will they be able to make a proper choice.
See, most of us get scared. This is where that if I am too honest, then maybe she won't do it, right? So that is why where we lack.
Correct.
However, if we break it down into your age, let's say if these many number of eggs are, I take it out, then probably we'll be able to form these many blasts, give them a perspective of total numbers and be completely honest about it.
Do you give that written evidences of these?
Yes, we do have a PowerPoint presentation in which we give the age-wise probability and how much an egg in a young woman, what's the probability. So one egg probably has a 6% chance in a young woman to result in a live birth, wherein a 40-year-old will probably need 40 eggs to have a good chance. So
Because
this is why
I'm very
we talk
sure
about
eventually, we are coming to an era where if the patient is going to freeze eggs for years, they will take a legitimate, in writing.
They ask.
Yeah, so they ask for it, and they ask for
ask.
information leaflets,
yeah.
brochures,
Yes.
and
And
all
where
that
the-
They have
nowadays.
to be legally sued for it, you feel like that eventually?
So yesterday I started, she asked me what consent. So they are actually very well read lot. And even if you do marketing, they know this is not easy. 10 days of injection, one. So who will take the injection? It's the lifestyle what they are undergoing.
So,
They're investing into something for a lifetime.
Today, before coming here, we have a patient who's undergoing a pickup, who's a 40-year-old patient with a poor ovarian reserve, freezing her eggs electively to defer childbearing. And we retrieved 4 eggs. And luckily, all 4 eggs were mature, and I froze them before I came. But the
Live
next
birth
question
will
was
depend on the age that she'll be doing that. And
that
then
as
she,
well as
she
this
has to be
age,
made understood about this also.
she's 40 and now she's asking how many more rounds
do
of
that?
stimulation
Can
should
I do that?
So, you know,
They're
it's
actually willing for multiple rounds
Yes,
of
yes.
freezing
it's
as
depend
well.
upon that woman, you know, that
Correct.
lady, what is undergoing in her life.
So I think it was a valuable discussion for everyone. We would just have a rapid fire round with you all. Dr. Shweta, the single biggest difference between the oncofertility and the elective egg freezing that a person should be counseled for, I would like a one-sentence answer.
Onco-freezing is a life-threatening crisis. So it is very time-bound thing. That is very important and very intense counseling it can become. The social freezing is no urgency. You can take time. You can decide. So it's much easier. In fact, no time boundation.
Dr. Gaurav, the one lab metric every patient should be asked, should ask from you about before choosing a preservation center.
I'll give two. One is the skill and the experience of the embryologist performing.
True.
Because this is a very long learning curve. And second is the post-thaw survival rates of that laboratory. That is very, very important.
Dr. Parul, should elective egg freezing be discussed in undergraduate medical training? Yes or no? Why?
I think they already have a huge syllabus. We can defer it to postgraduate training if we are trying to discuss it. But yes, maybe introducing it a bit will be a good idea.
Perfect. Dr. Reema, is fertility preservation accessible enough in Tier 2 and 3 according to you in India right now? Yes or no?
No, even where it is accessible, acceptable is still an issue.
And this is a question to all for a few in your own words. If you should, like we say, insurance and all, do you think should employer-funded egg freezing programs be encouraged in India?
If they come with a condition that they are not
Because ultimately it's a medical condition.
conditional, I mean, they should not come as a package like Gaurav also said. They shouldn't be included in the HR benefit as long as they are clear. The counseling is done properly and informed consent. After you've informed everything, whether they choose to do it or not is their own choice.
Well, I think why not?
Why
if
not?
your company is
I
ready
believe
to,
why not?
and
Yes,
you know you are
Squeeze your
sponsoring
employer as much
holidays
as you
and
can.
everything. Why not?
But then it becomes, I think it becomes
if you can get that kind of revenue and your big companies, if they're, then that's okay.
Because
One
IVF
of
has
the-
now become,
Yeah,
if IVF can become funded, then why not
No,
egg freezing?
I do
I
not mean
think-
that. I am saying there's a chance of overselling the hope. You
I
still have to.
actually don't agree because those young
with
ladies.
counseling.
You
with
should still
How can you
counsel
An
oversell?
informed choice.
Actually,
you cannot oversell 10 days of injections. Will you take anything without
Nobody
need?
would.
So,
So
these
it's an
are
informed choice
educated
for sure.
women.
I just have
Counseling
one
now
thing to
is
say
still the
is that
must.
rather than offering an egg freezing package, egg freezing should be part of the insurance that a corporate provides.
Yes.
So that's the only thing we have to do, and then it's a patient's right decision and knowledge by which they can probably decide they want to do an egg freezing or not, rather than making a package that please go ahead and do an egg
Yes.
freezing.
This is what I'm
That's
saying.
what.
Yes.
So it has to be part of routine care for every woman.
I agree.
Yeah, we are done. Yeah. Thank you.
Enlightening discussion and enthusiastic participation. I think our audience really liked this kind of participation, the engagement we got, and the true insights. So thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much, Dr. Shweta, for exceptionally moderating this discussion, and to the panelists as well. I would like to request Dr. Shweta, ma'am, to please come and felicitate the co-panelist, Dr. Shweta Gupta. Let's have a round of applause for our speakers. Dr. Gaurav Majumdar. Dr. Reema Sircar. Let's have a round of applause. Dr. Parul Katiyar. I request everyone to please show some energy as we had an energetic, enlightening session with the special speakers. I request Ms. Khushbu Sharma, ma'am, please come on stage and felicitate Dr. Shweta Mendiratta for excellently moderating this session. I request everyone for a group picture.